Three, two, one, and we're officially live. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name's Lauren Brown. I'm the president of healthyseminars.com. And today we are having another lecture. This is a series that was the brainchild of Sharon Weizenbaum, Classical Chinese Herbal Prescriptions in Action or in Action to Response to the virus that cannot be named. And our presenter today is Sally Rappaport, and Sharon will be doing the introduction to Sally. So I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping, reminding those guys that for the live webinars, you have 48 hours to watch them afterwards, these recordings. I do want to let you know that on this page, so we have a page called healthyseminars.com/Sharon, and it's the whole schedule of these herbal prescriptions in action in response to the virus that cannot be named. And we're going to keep up the one that Sharon did on Friday, on April 3rd. We're going to keep this one up on the page. So we keep them up for 48 hours. However, this one we're going to keep up because it's the intro to the whole series. So it makes sense that we're just going to keep it up until the series is over. And then if you scroll down, the one or two that are up next, you can always log in. That's what you've done if you're here for the live webinar. Once it's over, so once this one is over by Sally Rappaport, it will stay up for 48 hours. So only Sharon's is going to stay up through the series. And if you scroll down, you can see what we have scheduled. Please check on it regularly because we're kind of just getting this going, and I know some may change because life changes and some may get added. So just check the schedule, and we'll usually have one or two of them available for sign up right away. You do need to sign up for each one individually to be part of the live webinar that you are today. So I just want to let you know that it's here on this page, and this is where you'll find the recording. I will want to just give a nice plug to Sharon's online programs that she has through Healthy Seminars. If you're doing telehealth and you want to deepen your knowledge and skills in Chinese herbal medicine, she has several classes. And if you use the coupon code HEALTHY25, then it will save you 25% off all her courses. And you can find that link on this page. And then if you've done her clarifying diagnosis course that she did a long time ago, which has just been revamped and released on Healthy. It used to be a 19 CEU course. Now it's 54. You can use that coupon to save 25%, and we'll also refund you the amount you paid when you bought it on ProD many years ago. So it's a super saving. Anyways, that's all on that page. And then we have on our homepage, you can find this, but we have a resource page. I just want to let you know what's available to you guys. So on healthyseminars.com, under resources, we just keep listing things that are happening. So we've created a telehealth section. We got topical webinars every Tuesday and Thursday. Right now we're doing Conscious Tuesday and Throwback Thursday. Here's the section for classical herbal prescriptions. So you can always find that on the resource page. And then what we have for CU approved courses and our discount. So lots of stuff on telehealth, some live stuff, some free stuff, some replay stuff, topical webinars. There's one that I did. There's some more stuff coming up. Different perspectives on the virus. We got a Neijing perspective happening with Ed Neal, Conscious Tuesday. So there's just stuff for you guys. And what the goal is for today and what we're doing at Healthy Seminars. So back on March 20th, we had an idea for a talk, which turned into Conscious Tuesdays. And I was talking to Randine Lewis, and I really wanted to share with the profession tools to help us find calmness in the presence of uncertainty. I wanted to do something that would just support us because there was a lot of stress back in March, and also to create community. They were using the term social distancing, and I felt that really it wasn't so much social distancing as physical distancing. So physical distancing, but we can still connect socially. So we wanted everybody's cameras on, which you have on, and we wanted everybody to be able to connect with each other and say hi to keep that social continuity. And that's why we're calling it Community, Unity, Immunity on our resource page. So on Thursdays, we pick a course that we had from many moons ago, and we get in the room together and we watch this recorded course for free together on Zoom, and then after we discuss it. So that's what we're doing on Healthy Seminars. Our goal is to basically create resources that will support you, and then you can take that and then share that through telehealth with your clients, and the community is really important. So that is why we keep up most of the recordings just for 48 hours. I didn't want to create content that wouldn't get watched. hence you got 48 hours. It really motivates you to watch it. And I wanted community. I actually want you here now, like you guys are. It doesn't serve that community if you're watching this 3 hours, 3 days later in isolation. And so that's why we're doing the recording stay up for 48 hours, because we know time zones don't work for everybody. So we want you here. So what we're going to do before I pass this on to Sharon is I want to remind you guys that if you have questions during the Q&A, raise your hand digitally. But if you guys can just turn on everybody's mics for 15 to 20 seconds, and you guys can say hi to each other. This is part of that community. Get the energy going. And you'll see that you'll recognize certain people's voices, and their images will show up on the screen a bit. So team, can you just give us 15, 20 seconds and then turn it off for everybody, and then we'll get it started. Everybody.
Everybody, good morning.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Here. And
Hello,
Connole. And
everyone.
Mary
Hi.
Claire.
And hi.
Everyone's doing good.
Hi.
All right. So Sharon and Sally, if you can unmute yourselves. Thank you guys for doing that. That fills me up that we're creating that community, because that's a big part of why I wanted to do what we're doing. And the series we have, we get to continue to learn, and we get to continue to have our community. Sharon, are you there?
I'm there.
Okay. Sally, can I get a hello from you just so your image pops up on the screen?
Hi, can you hear me?
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. I'm going to mute myself, Sharon. It's all you and Sally now, and then at the end we'll do Q&A.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lauren, and just a really big, heartfelt thank you to you for everything that you're doing. Just jumping into this and helping everybody. It's been wonderful. And for me, it's been such a silver lining to, be able to have a chance to apply and talk about principles that we've been studying and learning, and we've been applying them in our practice, but then to have this chance to watch them in action with our patients doing telemedicine. And then we've also had the opportunity to gather a group of practitioners together who have been working with the classic formulas in this way, and to collaborate like this. Something that never would have happened if we hadn't have had this virus come along. So for all of the difficulty and tragedy, there are some really nice things happening as well. So I want to introduce my friend and colleague, a woman who I have tremendous respect for, feel so lucky to have her in my friendship community as well as my herbal community, Sally Rappaport. She's an amazingly good herbalist. She treats my cousins. They're in Brooklyn, New York, does a wonderful job. And she's also the founder of the Shandong Society. Maybe we could put the link up for the Shandong Society, because it's the first herbal organization, Chinese herbal organization in the United States. And it's been growing over the 3+ years that it's been in existence. There's a great symposium every year, but it's really taking on issues that are specific for Chinese herbal medicine in this country, in terms of purity of herbs, growing of herbs, importing of herbs, how to work with herbs, just wonderful trainings through the Shandong Society. And that was Sally's brainchild. So she's just a queen of Chinese herbal medicine. So without further ado, I am introducing Sally to talk about Gui Zhi and Ma Huang formulas.
Sharon, thank you so much. And Lauren, thank you. This is just such an incredible time for all of us. I'm sitting here in my renovated house, half renovated house, and my husband is just peeking through the curtain. And we are here today to talk about Tai Yang. I also want to say that there's been so much news lately just in the last couple of days about Chinese herbs, and some of it has been so negative. But there was a wonderful, I think it started with a wonderful video from China talking about how useful Chinese herbs were for the virus there. And then NBC had a response to that was very negative, and they only highlighted Western medical doctors and scientists who were not very supportive of us. And one of Sharon's classic COVID group members, Candace Janya, wrote an amazing response to that negative report. So I hope you all get a chance to look at that. And Candace will be doing one of these herb lectures in a few weeks. So after this one, there are several more. You can see them on the Healthy Seminar schedule. And I think my last slide, I show some of the dates. So without further ado, let's get started talking about Tai Yang with patients with a virus. Most of you, let's see. I am just figuring out this technology, and there we go. Whoops, I went too quick. This is just an overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. First, a really simple review of some of what Sharon was talking about in her lecture on Friday in terms of how we look at the 6 conformations, not in terms of pathogens, but more in terms of function. Then we'll go right into the functions of Tai Yang, how to recognize Tai Yang disease in early stages of the virus with your patients, how to distinguish between a Huang Tang patient and a Gui Zhi Tang patient in terms of the virus, and then some of the commonly used Tai Yang formulas. I just want to say also that Tai Yang herbs are just one aspect of treatment for the virus. Mostly these formulas are going to be used when your patients call you at the very, very initial stage. However, we'll get into this a lot today, but part of what's so important about understanding this is that these formulas, or the essence of these formulas, can be important throughout your treatments. Okay. So, are we looking for pathogens or looking at how the body functions when we think about the 6 conformations? For all of us, we've studied at TCM schools, we've been in a culture where Western medicine is dominant. We're accustomed at looking through at pathogens through all of these different lenses. And this way of thinking leads us to thinking about protecting our bodies from pathogens, for fighting the pathogens, for getting rid of the pathogens out of our bodies, out of our patients' bodies. And it's really different from from thinking about how the body functions in terms of the 6 conformations. The Xiang is a really excellent resource to try to help you alter your way of thinking about this. It's very hard not to be stuck in that pathogen way of thinking. And I think you have to kind of retrain your brain. And I feel like I've been doing this for many years, but I'm still working on that for sure. So we are looking at the function of each of these 6 conformations in the body as a way of seeing through the signs and symptoms described in each line of the text. Sharon talked about this a little bit this like concept of seeing as a metaphor. So you're looking at these signs and symptoms, and they are a metaphor for what conformation is not functioning well. And it's so helpful if you can start seeing that in your patients. So this is again that idea that more than one of the conformations can be poorly functioning at the same time. I've heard from some other practitioners, and Sharon mentioned this, that they look at the Shanghan Lun, and the way we're taught in TCM school is that it's very linear. There's a pathogen and it goes from one conformation to the next, and then it goes to the next, and you have to treat it before it goes deeper into the body. Well, this is not how we're seeing it. And even in the text, if you're reading it in a basic way, you can see that there are conformations that happen at the same time. So for instance, a really simple formula like Gui Zhi Tang, which I'm not going to go into in depth today. Suzanne Connole will be doing a lecture on that. I think it's next week. So Gui Zhi Tang, it's Tai Yang and Xiao together. The conformations absolutely can happen at the same time. In terms of what we're talking about today, I think it's really important to think about that. And with these basic herbs, Gui Zhi and Ma Huang, they're the first herbs you ever learned in TCM school. And they're mostly for very early stages of the virus, but they're parts of the Tai Yang conformation that won't be functioning well in your patients, and you're going to have to combine these herbs with other herbs you're going to be using later on. And so it's really, that's why this is important information to really grasp in as much depth as possible. So Tai Yang Physiology, what is Tai Yang all about? It's about moving up and out. I think about it, and I think Sharon mentioned this too. It's like the tree above ground, the parts of the tree that are above ground going up from the trunk all the way out to the ends of the branches. Tai Yang is that moment of waking up with the yang qi that one has available for the day. And Tai Yang is also really about adapting well to changes in and interaction with the environment. All the conformations have to do with our way of interacting with the world around us, but Tai Yang is the one that's most significantly about our interaction with the external world, because it's going all the way to the surface of the body. So the channels connected with Tai Yang, the urinary bladder and the small intestine channel. I do think of the urinary bladder channel as being like the trunk of this tree, going the spine, the bladder channel going up either side of the spine, which is like the trunk of our bodies. And also the small intestine channel wrapping around the scapulas. I always have thought of that as being like the scapulas as being the roots of my wings that lead me out into the world, to fly out into the world and be my full and total self in the world. And I've always loved that image of flying from my wings and my scapulas. So Tai Yang also, according to the Neijing, Tai Yang is like cold water. Tai Yang is cold water. It's not like cold water. Tai Yang is cold water. This is about the way the yin fluids and the yang fire interact. The yin water holds the fire from heaven. In the body, Tai Yang water brings the fire all the way out to the surface. The surface of the body is colder than the center, just like on the earth, where the tops of mountains are much colder than the valleys, and the valleys are colder than the core of the earth. So this passage is a variation on something that Sharon talks about a lot in her GMP class. And so I just was trying to put it into my own words. It also made me think of the Kahn trigram, which you can see in there in the slide. So the Kahn trigram has the two broken lines of yin with the fire from heaven, the yang line in the middle. And so this is an important aspect of Tai Yang physiology. So Tai Yang pathology has to do with problems in the going up and out. Problems have to do with either going out too much or not enough. The function is either blocked or it's poorly controlled. So either no sweat's coming out or too much sweat is coming out. But basically, Tai Yang physiology has, certain other aspects. The most important ones that Sharon was highlighting, well, for one, we have the floating pulse. The floating pulse, which we're not able to feel right now because we're not able to have social contact. However, the reason the pulse is floating is that yang is coming up to the surface and not being able to go out in its normal way. You probably have, your patient could have just a thin tongue coat, have a pretty normal pink tongue with a thin white coat. Or it could be slightly thicker than that, especially with the virus. It might be starting to thicken up. Typical of Tai Yang patients is they have some kind of achy pain or neck stiffness or pain in their joints. Often the pain is where they're most vulnerable. If they tend to have knee pain, they're going to have, their knees are going to be particularly achy, that kind of thing. And they're going to have this feeling of, they're going to come in or they're going to come online and say to you, I feel like I'm coming down with something. That means different things to different people for sure, but it is this kind of sensation. It's often malaise, just feeling icky. It could be a scratchy throat. It could be slightly chills, maybe slight feverishness. Your ears could feel stuffy. You sneeze when you never sneeze. A slight runny nose with mostly clear white nasal mucus. You might have an aversion to cold and a mild fever. All these are possible Tai Yang issues that are caused by this inability for the qi to come out, up and out the way that it's supposed to in Tai Yang. A couple of things I wanted to talk about that I think about a lot with my patients, and I've really changed how I talk about these things over time. So the scratchy throat, how do you differentiate between a hot, swollen, sore throat, which is probably not Tai Yang, and just a scratchy throat? I really ask my patients very, very specific questions about this. It's really, really important. Just to differentiate, is their throat really, really burning, or is it just a scratchy throat? The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the mild fever. Temperatures right now with the virus can get very, very high. I've heard of a patient who had over 103 degrees for 13 days. And we're not talking about that in terms of a Tai Yang patient. We're talking about fevers 99, 100, that sort of thing. Most likely, it's not going to be a very, very high fever over 101. Possibly it could be and still be primarily a Tai Yang pathology, but most likely not. Okay. So your patient calls you, I think I have a cold, but it could be allergies. We see this all the time in clinic. Now, it also could be the virus. Some people are presenting with cold symptoms at the very beginning. Do we need to know, is it the virus? Well, we don't have that choice because people aren't getting tested at that point for sure. And it may not really matter. It doesn't really matter because we are going to treat what's presented to us. Other kinds of questions. If you have fatigue, could it be the virus? It could be the virus. People with the virus are showing very much, it's very, very, very common to have extreme fatigue. But can you get that when you get a cold? Sure. Can you get that if you have allergies? Sure. There's a whole allergy phenomena that I see and I've experienced myself fairly frequently with allergies, that you just have like this droopy lid thing that I call it like the heavy lid tiredness. It's like I feel like my lids get really heavy, and I've had patients come in and describe this, that I can't stay awake because of this heavy lidded fatigue. It could be a Tai Yang presentation. This is what it is. It's a Tai Yang presentation, and you can treat it with the kinds of herbs we're going to be discussing. So it's also possible that if you diagnose your patient correctly and give them the right formula, even if it is the virus, they will recover, and or their symptoms could be much milder if you give them at the very beginning the right formulas. Tai Yang formulas are appropriate if someone has shortness of breath, a feeling of cement in their chest, a really dry cough? No, that is a different presentation. It is not a Tai Yang presentation, and you need to use different formulas than what we're going to talk about today. Do you need to use cold herbs like Yin Shao San because your patient might have the virus? No, you don't. That formula is likely to not be helpful when your patient is presenting with a scratchy throat, aversion to cold, achy joints, achy body, and other Tai Yang signs. So your patient comes in and they have these symptoms that we've just talked about: a thin white coat, achy pain, aversion to cold, maybe a mild fever. They say, I feel like I'm coming down with something. You have to decide, is it Shanghan or is it Zhongfeng? So I just want to talk about these pinyin terms for a moment. Shanghan, in terms of being the set of Mahong formulas connected with that. That term Shanghan has multiple meanings in the Shanghanlun. Yes, it's in the name of the treatise. It's the treatise of cold-induced disorders, Shanghanlun. That is the broad use of the term. And then in the Tai Yang chapter, the Mahong formulas are called Shanghan, cold-induced. So this is the narrow use of the term in the text. And when you first are looking at the text closely, it's very, very confusing. So here, when we're saying, is it Shanghan, we're talking about that narrow sense of the term. Mahong formulas characterized by no sweat. Or it could be Zhongfeng. Zhongfeng translates as wind strike. And there the person sweats easily, or they're sweating, but the condition is not resolving because in Tai Yang, that function of opening up and out is not functioning properly. So sometimes it's too open, and so the patient is sweating really easily. In Shanghan, it's blocked, so they're not able to open it all. The idea of aversion to wind is often associated more with Zhongfeng. The character for Feng, which I meant to put in here and didn't get to, is wind. And so both Shanghan and Zhongfeng can both have aversion to cold and aversion to wind, but it's often characterized as being part of the Gui Zhi Tang aspects of Tai Yang disease. So let's look more closely at these two herbs that are paired in Huang Tang. They work together really, really well, but they're also really, really different. And they're herbs that you are all familiar with because they were on day one of your first herb class. So the things that I think are most important in terms of the virus with Ma Huang and Gui Zhi, first of all, they're both warm and acrid. So they're both warming to the body and they're acrid, so they're opening up and out. Ma Huang is slightly bitter and Gui Zhi is sweet. So that bitterness is slightly descending and the sweetness is tonifying slightly to the middle. They are both opening the pores. Ma Huang is the herb in the Materia Medica that most strongly opens the pores. Gui Zhi gently opens the pores. Ma Huang has that function of opening the lungs and stopping wheezing. This is super important, and this is why it's used in lots of formulas for the virus. And the thing about it, of course, which we'll get to in a moment, is that it also has side effects. So you do have to be really careful about dosage. Another aspect of Ma Huang that tends to be forgotten is that it does promote urination and reduces edema. That's particularly for Tai Yang type edema, like your patient that comes in with allergies and their eyes are all swollen, or they have puffiness in their face. Gui Zhi, on the other hand, has this wonderful aspect of warming the yang. It warms the yang to stop pain in the channels. It transforms thin mucus. That's used in a formula like Lingui Zhugan Tang, which is really good for lots of phlegm, but it tends to be the more loose, watery phlegm. So again, that's not a formula particular for the virus, since the virus people tend to have this dry, stuck phlegm. But it unblocks the qi of the chest. It warms the middle jiao. It does those things in such a way that it's not strongly unblocking, but it's warming the yang, which allows the qi in the chest to flow better. It allows the warming the middle. It allows the turbid yin to descend in the way it's supposed to. It allows the qi in the chest to descend for insomnia and running piglet-like syndromes. So let's go on and discuss some of the dosage issues with Ma Huang. I also will talk later about substitutions for Ma Huang, since I'm sure some of you have trouble getting it. I do have some in stock, so we'll get to that in a moment. But in terms of side effects, Ma Huang causes too much sweating, so there's an issue with people becoming dehydrated if it's used in too high dosages. Ma Huang can raise the blood pressure, it can cause palpitations, it can cause insomnia. So what are safe dosages? These are my criteria for that. Does your patient normally have any of the above conditions? If they do, then you either don't use it or you start them with very, very small dosages. Some of our patients with the virus seem to really need that opening the lung function of Ma Huang. So in that case, I would start with 1.5 to 3 grams in a formula for them, and then you monitor them closely. What does monitoring them closely look like? That means you are calling them after they take it for the first time, the next day, the next day, the next day. You're really checking in on them to make sure they're not having any side effects. If they have no side effects and the formula isn't yet effective, if it's effective at that really low dose for that patient, then that's great. If it's not, you can very slowly inch up the dosage. If your patient has an appropriate presentation for using Ma Huang normally, you may start with a low dosage and increase it slowly also. Especially if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of experience using it, but you have some in stock so that you can use it in your formulas for your patient, or you can get it from Camwo. Camwo is allowing practitioners to use Ma Huang in formulas. They won't sell it by itself, but in a formula, they will sell it to you or send it to your patient. You can start, I do suggest if you're not experienced with it, start with a low dosage and gradually raise it until it's effective, as long as there are no side effects. In your COVID cases, if you're comfortable, I have been using, and I did kind of do a quick survey of colleagues about how much they've used over time with their virus patients. Whoops. So I would say that the highest very safe dosage is 9 grams for a short period. I would say about 3 to 4 days. And then if the patient needs more, you can continue using it with a lower dosage. I also just want to say that I was looking at this in Bensky, and the toxic dosage in the Materia Medica, toxic dosage was 30 to 45 grams. So that is way higher than 9 grams, my suggested dosage. So I think that it is a very, very safe herb if anyone is concerned. Okay. So just the basic formula, Ma Huang Tang. This is the idea of Tai Yang being blocked. It's a combination of Ma Huang and Gui Zhi together, working together to open the pores. Xing Ren helps the Ma Huang to unblock the lungs for wheezing, and Zheng and Xiao to help support the stomach qi and harmonize the formula, as they say in TCM. So here, your patient will have these Tai Yang symptoms that we talked about: the achy pain, the feeling like I'm coming down with something, the aversion to cold and maybe a mild fever, the thin white tongue coat. And on top of that, the Ma Huang type of patient will not be sweating. They may have headache and a lot of pain. It's pretty, Ma Huang is like, the Ma Huang presentation is frozen. The ability to go up and out is just, it's like that tree with ice all over it. It's impossible. They may have wheezing, they may have the facial edema. In terms of dosing, the dosings that are underlined in this slide are the traditional dosages, but clinically, most of the time, Ma Huang amounts are lower, on the lower side of that. Okay, so substitutions for Ma Huang. Many of you, I'm sure, cannot get a hold of Ma Huang for these reasons that the FDA will not let us get it very easily. So I I feel like substitutions for Ma Huang are dependent on the function that you're trying to replace. Sharon mentioned Jingjier. I think that's a really good substitution to open the pores. I suggest at least 9 to 12 grams to do that. I think other possibilities for that, for opening the pores strongly or increasing the dosage of Gui Zhi and Shengjiang, doing that together, that is the suggestion of another of my teachers, Suzanne Robidoux. You can go up to 20 grams, and that's of course going to be much more warming if you're increasing Gui Zhi and Shengjiang so much. You could, if your interest is in opening the chest, I think a possibility would be to use Zhegang and Gualo, up to from 9 to 15 grams. And for real cough, you could use Zhewan and Guangdong Hua. So just to talk about the herbs a little bit more, Zhegang is also benefits the throat, and I think of it as circulating the lung qi. Gualo opens the chest. So those are really good 2 herbs to use together, and they're in some of these formulas that we're going to be discussing in the coming weeks. Zhewan and Guangdong Hua together are really useful. Zhewan strongly descends the lung qi. Guangdong Hua resolves phlegm. So these are all herbs that you could be using with your cases with the virus. I've heard mention Xiang Ru. It's just an herb that is in some ways, in its acridity, it's really similar to Ma Huang, but it's not an herb that I use a lot. So I'm not as familiar with it, but that could possibly be a substitution as well. So let's move to Gui Zhi Tang. So Gui Zhi Tang is much more about the Tai Yang that is permeable. It's not controlled well. That up and out function is really, really poorly controlled. So sometimes the patient is sweating too much. It's too open. This person is too open, too porous. And so the way that Gui Zhi Tang treats this is Gui Zhi and Baishao together and Shengjiang and Dazhao together harmonize the yin and the wei. And Gui Zhi and the Shengjiang together are causing an effective control of those pores to have a therapeutic sweat rather than too much sweating. The Zhigen Xiao and the Dazhao together are supporting the function of the middle jiao here. So these are all things that you're really familiar with. And again, I'm just going over it. The Tai Yang symptoms are all there that we've discussed in this patient. But this is the person who's sweating easily. They likely have an aversion to wind as well as to cold. They may have blood deficiency because that's part of this yin and wei out of disharmony. The yin and the wei is another aspect of what I talked about in terms of that Tai Yang function of the warmth bringing the fluids all the way to the surface. That warmth bringing the fluids all the way to the surface is the harmonizing of yin and wei. This is Tai Yang, good Tai Yang function. When the yin and the wei are not harmonized, then this causes this possibility of sweating too much. This person who tends to have the lack of control of this function, to have this yin wei disharmony, is what I think of as kind of a porous person. It's this person who's easily rattled. And, you know, I would say our culture is kind of rattled right now with everything that we're having to deal with social distancing and with the virus. But this person is probably easily anxious all the time, maybe tends towards insomnia, maybe chills easily. So this is the person that you might be treating a little bit differently if they have the virus, and using more these types of herbs, this Gui Zhi Xiao combination in their formula. Okay. So, kind of to sum this up, there are certain combinations that I think are super important with the virus. Ma Huang and Xing is one of them. It's really useful for opening the lungs. You may be using high dosages of these herbs for a short amount of time with the virus. Another combination is the Gui Zhi Xiao with Zheng, especially the Xiao Zheng combination. Xiao is another term for Bai Xiao. That combination is really good for any kind of, for pain, for spasms, for pain particularly in the abdomen. And with Gui Zhi, it can really harmonize the yin and wei for your patients that really need that. Some concerns with herbs with the virus. One of them, I've seen a lot of formulas where people choose like the formulas for the virus that are based on Chai Gui Zhi Tang, for example, where they might leave out the dazao because it's particularly cloying. And when you have a lot of phlegm, that's going to be a really bad idea. So that's something to think about in your formula. And then another thing to think about when you're using some of these herbs and using and Tai Yang as part of your patient's presentation is whether you're going to use Shangjiang or Ganjiang. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we get to Shaoqing Tang. But I think that this issue has to do with how much cold you're seeing. How do you tell how much cold you're seeing? We can't take pulses, but the tongue, if the tongue is really pale, what the color of the coat, and how the patient is feeling. All right. So some of the formulas that are frequently used in COVID, bleep, in the virus. Gurgentang. So Gurgentang is considered a Ma Huang formula, but it actually, if you look at the herbs in there, it's Gui Zhi Tang modified by Gurgen and Ma Huang. So this formula is definitely for a patient that is not sweating. There is a variation on this formula, Gui Zhi Jia Gurgentang, that can be used if your patient is sweating. And it's the same formula without the Ma Huang. I think I've heard, I have not seen a patient like this, but I have heard that there are patients presenting with the virus and their first presentation is a Ma Huang presentation with a neck ache. And this would be the best formula to use. And one of the great things about Gurgen is it also is used to stop diarrhea. This formula is a formula that can be used to stop diarrhea. And so if your patients have loose stools at this stage and they have a Tai Yang presentation, this would be a great formula for them also. So we have a case. As I said, I haven't used this, but a practitioner colleague told me about that she woke up with a stiff neck and a feeling of malaise with a stuffy nose. She had that feeling, I'm coming down with something. And she has a tendency towards loose stool. She took Gurgentang and all those symptoms went away, but she did find that her heart was racing. So she realized that next time she needs to take this formula, she would use the version without the Ma Huang, the Gui Zhi Tang. So another variation on these Tai Yang formulas that could be really useful right now is Gui Zhi Hopo Xing Tang or Xing Tang. Both Zhe and Ren mean seed. And so this is the apricot seed that's used in this formula. So it's Gui Zhi Tang with the addition of Hopo, the magnolia bark, and Xingren, the apricot seed. So I've used this formula a lot in my clinic, not particularly for the virus, but with patients who tend towards getting coughs when they just catch a cold. And these are patients who tend to sweat easily and they have a cough. With a virus, this would be a mild cough. They're not having that crazy dry cough with the cement in their chest. They have a little cough with cold symptoms, and then this would be a great formula for them. In addition, if they have some wind damp signs, like a lot of achiness in their joints, but they are sweating, you could add Ma Huang. I'm sorry, you would not add Ma Huang to this formula. You would add Fang Feng to the formula for that achiness, that wind damp sign. And if they have a stuffy nose, you could add Xinyi. And this is the Fang Feng Xinyi is a really common modification for Gui Zhi Hopo Xing Tang. In addition, and I haven't talked about the method yet this morning or this afternoon, don't forget the method. If you're really using a Gui Zhi Tang formula with your patients, you need to use the method. So, reminder of what that is. Traditionally in China, it was using kanji. I have my patients take half a cup of oatmeal with their tea, with their Gui Zhi Tang formula. And then you get under the covers. So 3 steps to the method. Drink your tea, have some kanji or oatmeal, and get under the covers. This will help your body to generate that therapeutic sweat to resolve the Tai Yang pathology. Okay. So this is just a case from my clinic. It's not a virus case. A 26-year-old patient with a feeling of malaise. I was actually treating her for something else, but she came in one day with this. She tends to have an aversion to wind. She sweats easily, and she develops bronchitis easily. So she had come in she'd started a running nose and but no scratchy throat or any other symptoms, just a runny nose and a little bit of that malaise, that feeling that she was coming down with something. I gave her this formula, and with this patient, because she has a tendency towards bronchitis, her lungs are her weak point, I automatically added the Hopo and the Xingren. As well, since she had the runny nose, I added the Fang Feng and the Xinyi, and her symptoms were all gone in a few days. So, these formulas are not like really complex at this stage, but the way, if you go back to the slide, I'm going to go back a little bit. To this slide, thinking about the sorry. Thinking about these combinations, the Ma Huang and the Xing, these are the formulas these are the ways that you're going to be modifying your formulas for the virus with herbs like Ma Huang and Xing, with herbs like those substitutions.
Sally, can I get a clarification on something?
Sure.
Right, because I'm hearing sometimes like for the virus, my understanding is it's for the person that's presenting whether they have that virus or not. So they don't have to have that Western
Exactly.
diagnosis. Can you just
That's
clarify?
true. That's true. So I am saying that a lot. I apologize. It's very true. Thank you, Lauren, for correcting me. There aren't the patients with a virus. There are patients that you're suspecting that they might have it, but you are treating them for what they're presenting with. And I think I just have been over speaking, saying for the virus to help you understand that if you are concerned about them possibly having it, for sure, most of the people that we're seeing now haven't been tested, so we don't know if they have it. But if you're concerned they might have it, then you can be thinking about these herbs. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's really helpful. And because I know for myself and many people on the Facebook page that are watching this right now, there's a few watch parties watching you right now on Facebook and us here in the Zoom room. One of the comments is, it's been such a nice review. And then we're hearing things that we missed when we, in the early days, that this is just doesn't matter what the virus is or what's going on out there, just remembering how to use these formulas for the presentation that comes into your clinic. And then just the modification, like that whole Guggen reminder of like, yeah, if they're sweating, then just take out the Ma Huang. Like, I mean, it's simple and brilliant, which makes it so effective. And it doesn't matter what the Western diagnosis is. What are their signs and symptoms? What are their presentation? We're loving this, by the way, Sally. This is amazing.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So I just want to kind of reiterate these substitutions, some of these herbs that we talked about, these are the kinds of modifications you're going to be making for your formulas. If your patient is presenting with a need for opening the chest, you can use Zheng and Gualo. You can use the Zerwan and the Guangdonghua, and I will mention some more in the next slide, which I have to move back to. I'm not used to this technology, folks. Sorry. There we are. There it is. So Xiao Huang Tang. So this is a really important formula. It's kind of a quirky combination of Gui Zhi Tang and Ma Huang Tang, and with some kind of twists. There's Ma Huang Gui Zhi and Zhigen Xiao from Ma Huang Tang, and Gui Zhi Bai Xiao Zhigen Xiao from Gui Zhi Tang. But there are other additions. This is a formula that uses the Ganjiang instead of Shengjiang. And that is primarily because there is more cold. And it also has Shixin in it, which some of you will have trouble getting, but you can often get the formula made up already. So Shixin is also really good for opening the nose and opening the Tai Yang. Wu Weizi helps to conserve and hold the lung qi, and the Ban Xia is strongly descending the lung qi and transforming phlegm. It's a little bit on the drying side to dry up those fluids. So the presentation for Xiao Tang, it's my go-to formula for allergies. It's thank you, Sharon. It's a great, great formula for allergies, especially with lots of watery mucus, watery eyes. It's a really perfect for that. It's a great formula anytime someone has a lot of watery phlegm, when they have that feeling when they lie down that they're underwater because there's so much fluid in their chest. This is just a wonderful formula for that patient that comes in with those feeling like they're getting sick, feeling like they're coming down with something, and they have that wet tongue, or possibly you might have just a swollen tongue. There are common modifications for this formula. Some of them are from the Shanghanlun, the first few. If they have thirst, that means that their fluids are a little bit dried up. So you would take out the banxia and add in Tianhua Fen to increase the fluids. You can also add Xing to this formula if they're wheezing. If they have inhibited urination and fullness in their lower abdomen, you might remove the ma huang and add fu ling. Then other herbs, the last two modifications are my own. Herbs that I think of adding if they have a lot of phlegm are zhebe mu and pipaya, and then the ziwan guangdong hua combination. If they have a lot of nasal mucus, there's the xinihua that we mentioned earlier, but there's also tsangarza and baizhi are great modifications. So the important signs to think of if for this formula are the wet tongue coat, a very puffy tongue, the patient feeling like they're drowning when they're lying down because there's so much fluid in their lungs. Sometimes for this formula, if the patient has a fever, also I will add shigao to it. And in addition, this formula is considered, it has the ma huang, so it's considered to be a formula for the person who's not sweating. You want them to sweat. Yeah, so this formula is in that category of ma huang formulas. All right, so I think that I am finished. My next slide is just showing everyone the schedule. Again, you can see this on Healthy Seminars of future presentations. And the next one will be on Friday. And Sharon will be doing it on Mashing Shugan Tang and Baihu Tang. This is just the short list. There are more formulas, and Wuling San is another important Tai Yang formula that will be covered in a future presentation by Sarah Rivkin that I didn't include on this list, but I think it's on the list on the Healthy Seminars resources page. So
this is awesome. Now we're going to do some Q&A. So thank you very much, Sally and Sharon. Thank you for just organizing this great resource of people to share these formulas. And again, I love this because so many people are talking about herbs and COVID and going after the disease, which just didn't resonate for me. And then Sharon, we had this discussion. We're like, look, forget about the Western diagnosis. Just look at what's presenting in your clinic. And we have formulas for this. And that's what we're doing. And you guys and Adol, you're seeing some stuff in your practice, and you're staying true to the principles of Chinese medicine. And it doesn't matter what the Western diagnosis is. This was such a great review. And Sally, what a gift. I've never heard you present before. And so what a gift to you made it so simple. I just drank it in and easy. It just came in so easy. So wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Guys,
welcome.
raise your hand. So we're going to take questions. We got some in the chat room. We're going to share a document as well, Sally. So we'll let people, because again, our goal was community, right? And so we do want people to kind of turn on their mics and talk to you. If your mic isn't working, we'll just mute you and go to the next person. Just we're not going to do tech work, but we'll also share the questions that we found in the chat room as well, so you can see those and pick that as well. I just want to remind you guys of a few things again. The resource page is healthyseminars.com/resources. There's a link there to take you to all of these herb courses. Sharon's course that's been referred to a couple of times, she kicked off the series, and that we're going to keep up throughout all of April and May while we're doing this. And I was just talking to the team because all the recordings that we're doing, all the free stuff, the stuff that you pay for in Healthy stays in your account. You get 2 years to complete that for CEUs. Sharon stuff and all the herb courses are on sale on the site. You can see that also on the resources page. For this free stuff that we're doing, we were saying staying up for 48 hours because we want you to watch it and we want you to be here actually live. My team just said, look, we got so many things happening every day. Let's just make Sunday the day that we're going to take stuff down. So Sunday, end of day, British Columbia time. So for my Australians and New Zealanders, that's Monday for you guys for sure, and early Monday for those in Europe. Sunday, end of day, let's call it that. Everything that we do for that week is coming down. So this is a Monday. We're streaming this for free. This is now going to stay up just until the end of Sunday. Sharon's first course is going to stay up through the whole series, but we have a course Monday and we have a course Friday on the series. Both Mondays and Fridays are coming down to end of day Sunday. We're not providing with handouts. However, you can go back and take a break from Tiger King on Netflix and watch this again and take notes, okay? So you have the opportunity now until Sunday to review this if it's important to you. Raising hands, let's get in here and let's just start. Let's see if I can figure this out. We got.
Can I just add something, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to thank Sally. It was so great. And also, just we can see how these subtle modifications of the formulas make so much difference. And when the formulas are really accurate that way, they work so quickly. And there's sort of a saying in Chinese medicine that, you know, doctors don't like to treat colds and flus, like upper respiratory things, because they get very acute very fast. And so whether you're right or not shows up really quickly. Like if you're working with chronic illnesses, you can treat and maybe not have it just right. And well, it's supposed to take a long time to get better anyway. But with acute things, you don't have that. You have to kind of get it right. And I want to say that, like, thinking about the formulas the way that we are, like, I really understood, like, I hate treating colds and flus because all I had was, like, you know, Yin Chao San and Gan Mao Ling and, you know, all the things we sort of learn in our basic education, you know, the Xie Bai Tong, and I didn't have the kind of diagnostic subtlety to really see exactly where it was and get it right. And now, like, I love treating upper respiratory things because, you know, often the patient will come in and be sick and I can give them the herbs and let them work while they're on the table. And often they're better when they get up. You know, that when you get it right, there's a change very quickly, and it's not rocket science to get it right. You know, so thank you so much, Sally. And, you know, I hope people feel, you know, empowered to be able to work. That's our goal is, like, we have the principles, we have the formulas, and the principles, doesn't matter if it's this virus or not, the principles always stay the same. And so we have those principles, and now we're seeing in our group they work. And so that's why we want to really share them. So, okay.
There were a few things about that I wanted to talk about that I forgot. One, with Gui Zhi Tang, for instance, the ratios in the formula are so important, especially the ratios of Gui Zhi and Bai Xiao. If you're treating a Tai Yang condition, you really want the Gui Zhi and the Bai Xiao to be the same amounts, because if you increase the Gui Zhi, it tends to, that's Gui Zhi Jia Gui Tang, and that tends to be used more for a patient who's having palpitations, for a Ben Tun condition. the running piglet. If you add more Bai Xiao than Gui Zhi, then that's Gui Zhi Xiao Bai Xiao Tang, which is more has that little formula in it, the Xiao Yao Gancao Tang, which is more for spasms. So then you're telling the body that that's what you want to do. So if you want to use Gui Zhi and Bai Xiao together, it's really important that they're at the if you want to use them together for a Tai Yang presentation, it's pretty important with like a wind cold kind of condition that you use the same amounts. So dosage is super important.
It's like cooking, right, guys? It's a recipe, right? So
yeah, it's like baking, which is one of my favorite things to do in the world.
So let's go to Bethany. Hi, Bethany. Let's unmute Bethany. And I still see she's muted. Now, Bethany, your microphone should work. Go for it.
Great. I have two questions. One is with the Ma Huang presentation, when you have people who are presenting with high blood pressure or insomnia or some of those symptoms, and you're giving them a low dose, and the formula isn't effective, would you double the amount? So instead of 1.5, you would double it to 3 grams, or would you increase it incrementally by half grams, or how quickly?
So if they're not having side effects and it's not effective, I would probably go from 1.5 to 3. 3, I might just raise 1.5 grams to 4.5, 4.5 to 6, if I was really concerned about them. Yeah. And yeah, that's probably what I would do. Okay.
And the second part of my question is, you can have a Gui Zhi Tang pattern where somebody is not sweating because they're so deficient, correct?
What do you mean by deficient?
Like their fluids are they're so weakened, like they have a history maybe of sweating a lot, and they've now depleted all their fluids, but there's still a Gui Zhi pattern, but they're kind of dry. That's correct. Is that?
Yes, that's certainly possible. But you would be modifying that formula. There is a formula in the Shanghan Lun that has Renchen in it. And lower dosages of Gui Zhi. I think it's a higher dosage of Bai Xiao and Shengjiang. And the Bai Xiao is because it's a little bit astringing, that the formula is like that. So I might add something like Tianhua Fen, possibly, if they had any lung symptoms, perhaps, or something like that, just adding herbs, modifying it to supplement their fluids. So it's certainly possible. And the Shanghan Lun is full of those kinds of situations where someone has sweated too much, and so they're still a Gui Zhi type person, but they're dehydrated. That was a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think also I would just add that the idea of sweating with the Gui Zhi Tang pattern really means that the surface is open. And so I'm not looking for someone saying, yeah, I'm sweating. You know, if I ask, are you sweating a lot? Very often they're like, no, not really. But when I feel their skin is moist. So I know for sure their surface is not closed, right? It's not dry. And so that's enough for me to know that their surface is open. So the sweating in Gui Zhi Tang is sort of code for the surface is open.
Yeah, and but you certainly can be a Gui Zhi. It can be a Gui Zhi Tang presentation with dryness too, or a Gui Zhi Tang type that has the dry skin.
Thank you. Next up is Maria. You should have access to your microphone.
Thank you, Sally. What a helpful presentation, really. I had a couple questions. One was on the Xiao Qing Long Tang.
Yes.
The modification you suggested if there was fullness in the lower abdomen and inhibited urination. Why wouldn't Ma Huang take care of that? Like I think that you suggested taking out the Ma Huang and adding Fu Ling. Is there a differentiation?
Yeah, because the inhibited urination, in this case, when the fullness is in the lower abdomen, is more fooling kind of fullness, and the urination is being held in the bladder. It's not
Okay.
like you're having a upper body edema with fullness in your face.
Okay, great, great. So that Ma Huang's more for that kind of edema. Okay.
Exactly.
And then the other question on that same formula, to add Shigao for fever, is that when you're seeing a higher fever? Because couldn't that person still have fever with that same?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And there's another formula that I think will be in the Mushing Shergan Tang presentation on Friday, Da Qing Long Tong. And that formula does have Shergao in it, but occasionally I have just added Shergao or even given my patient Shergao separately and said, if tomorrow morning or tonight you end up with a high fever, add this to your formula, and then it could still resolve it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, one more question, actually. You also mentioned, which I see that when there's blood deficiency, that can be a yin wei, that is a yin wei disharmony. And would you, it can be, so with Gui Zhi Tang presentation, if there's also blood deficiency, would you add something like Dangui? There's already Bai Xiao in there, and
it would really depend on the presentation and what I was trying to address.
I guess what I'm asking is, would that inhibit that up and out function to nourish the blood that way?
I probably, if they were coming in for the Tai Yang presentation, I probably would not add Dongui.
Okay.
Even if they were blood deficient, I would wait for them to get better.
Okay.
If they were coming in with a Gui Zhi Tang, as a Gui Zhi Tang type patient, and I was treating them for fertility,
Right.
I would definitely be adding other herbs.
Yeah, I meant more in the acute Tai Yang stage.
I would not add blood
nourishing,
blood nourishing herbs like Dangui in that case.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Let me just get. And when you guys are up, what I'd like you to do is say where you're from, just so we get to know you. For me, anyhow, I get to know some of you I've never met face to face before. And team, can you share the document? What will happen is all of our faces, we'll still see a handful of us, so you can move the arrow. And team, my understanding is when somebody speaks, they'll get highlighted to the front. So let's share the document that has the questions, and we'll go there. Next is Shannon. Shannon, where are you from?
I'm from Vancouver.
Okay. Hi, Shannon. Nice to see you.
Hi. Thank you so much, Sally. It's been great. I have a question. I work with granules, and usually I'm doing percentage. Like I look at what the decoction is, and I'm putting into percentage. I don't have as much experience with Ma Huang Tang. I have lots with Gui Zhi Tang and all the variations. But so when you're doing granule, how much are you doing per day? And you're looking at percentage. Does that make sense?
How much am I doing per day? It depends on my dosage. I tend to multiply formulas, and I would when I have a granular pharmacy. I tend to multiply them and make it 100 grams, and then again, that's a way that you can sort of test the patient with Ma Huang by starting them on a lower dosage, like maybe 3 grams twice a day, and see how they do, and then increase it to my normal dosage, which is more like 4 or 5 grams twice a day.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. And again, just a reminder here, we got another one. We're going to go through the questions here on the document. The resources are healthyseminars.com/resources. You'll see tons of our resources that are available to you. Calm Tuesday, Throwback Thursday, this herbal series, and much, much more. And the recordings to these free lectures will come down each week on Sunday at the end of day. The one that Sharon did to kick off this series stays available. And during the isolation time, Healthy Seminars website is on sale for on-demand recorded courses at 25% off. So all of April, and maybe longer if we stay in isolation longer. That coupon code is Healthy25. Check out Sharon's herbal courses, and there's lots of herbal courses. All of her courses have herbal content. And if you're doing telehealth, great opportunity to learn. I love her Naughty Disease course. Up next, we have Jennifer, and then we'll go to the Q&A on the document here. So Jennifer, you should have access to your microphone.
Got it. Yeah, thanks. Hi, I'm from Sonoma. Hi, Sally. So
Hi,
I have a question about the mechanism of Ma Huang and how it opens the lung, because one of the sneaky parts of this virus is that increased capillary permeability in the lung and the leakage of the fluids. And so would Ma Huang increase that capillary permeability?
All right. So my understanding about this is that Ma Huang actually does not do that. It regulates it. And I was toying with including this in my presentation and then did not. But on one of the Facebook pages where people are talking a lot about cases, several weeks ago when we didn't have any cases here yet, really, and it was just in China, there was a MD in China who also used herbs, and she was talking about how even with her most sick patients, the ones that were in very serious condition on ventilators, she was keeping them, maybe starting them at some point, they were on higher dosages of Ma Huang, but then she was keeping a small amount in there because of the issues where a lot of these patients end up dying from heart failure. And it seemed that the Ma Huang actually helps increase the blood pressure and was really incredibly useful in these patients with who had very serious cases. So she would keep them on 3 milligrams of Ma Huang in their formulas. So I did not have time to go and look that up. So that's why I didn't look up her name. But she had posted a whole series of case studies of all of her patients, and I thought that was really interesting because it seems, from what I'm hearing, people are dying not of pneumonia, but they're dying of heart failure and kidney failure right now.
So it sounds like the Ma Huang actually increases the perfusion of blood into the organs. Yeah, which is right. That's the problem.
I think that makes more sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Jennifer. So for you, Sally and Sharon, we'll go through these questions. So let's have some fun with this. Do you have a translation of the Shanhan Lun you prefer or recommend?
I have several versions.
Give us one.
So the Craig Mitchell translation is the one that I brought with me from Brooklyn, upstate.
Perfect. Thank you. The formulas that you gave were for raw formulas. If somebody's using granules, can you advise how they can take what you've mentioned in raw and turn that into a granular formula?
I'm really bad at the conversion, talking about it, but I plug it in and that's what I do. There's a formula for doing that, and that's what I do. Yeah, so I think to me, it's the ratios of the herbs that are the most important thing. So that's really what I mostly do. If I'm making formulas for another practitioner, then I do the plug-in to the
I get it.
formula.
It's mathematics then. So you take the formula.
I mostly think about ratios and how much of the herb I'm going to give to a patient. So often with these kinds of formulas, they're only going to be on the formula really for a few days, because by then it's either going to change or resolve. So I'm not really giving them like 100 grams. I'm giving them a smaller amount. And sometimes if I'm giving them a higher amount, it's because I'm having them taking the herbs every few hours. So that's also something with these Tai Yang disorders, that you often will be advising your patient to take a Gui Zhi Tang formula, or even a Huang Tang or like a Xiao Tang formula. When their serious symptoms are really bad, you're going to advise them to take it every few hours, every 3 to 4 hours, to have a stronger effect in a shorter time.
Good. Thank you. What about substitutes for promoting urination other than Mawang?
Okay, you're really digging into my memory, but I do think that Xiang Ru, if my memory serves me correctly, does promote urination. So that's a good reason to use that herb. But otherwise, I would use that's maybe Fuling. Yeah.
Okay. At what level of fever do you not add warm herbs like ganjiang and shangjiang?
So let's see. Sharon, do you want to take that one? I'm thinking about it and I have some ideas. Is Sharon still there? Oh, she might not be there anymore. Okay.
Right. Well, let's just pass. Sally,
I can take a stab at it.
Because if you want, the way we roll here at Healthy is we don't expect you to have the answers to everything. And so if you don't have it, you can say, I have to think about it. Next time I'll get back to you on it. You don't have to answer off the cuff if it's not there. I mean, that's life. Nobody always has the answer right off the tip. So let's go to another question that you feel good about. And then if it comes back, yeah, otherwise, I'm sure the next time we do this, you may want to address that. Is that fair for you? Does that feel comfortable?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
I have a patient I'm working on who needed Ma Xing Shergan Tang, and she texted me immediately after that she felt so much better. But how long do we continue after this type of experience now that they felt improvement?
It depends. That's why it's a good idea with these kinds of cases, with Tai Yang presentations, that you keep in close touch with your patient, because the situation can change quickly. So if they're feeling a lot better, but they're not all the way better, you want to continue with the formula for at least 24 more hours, I would say, but maybe at a lower dosage. So if they were taking it every 3 or 4 hours, they might take it twice a day. They might go from 4 or 5 times a day down to 2 to 3 times a day, something like that. And then if they're all the way better, then they can stop the formula.
Perfect. All right, we're at that time, guys. So thank you for your questions. I just want to remind you guys that Sharon's course is on her page. And again, the site is on sale for 25% off. However, we got tons of free stuff. We got lots of resources. And so just check out the healthyseminars.com resource page. We keep adding to this daily. Later today, we got Deborah Betts, Claudia Sikovitz, Kate Levitt, and Emily Solomons. So New Zealand, Australia, United States, and Canada. And they're going to talk about the value that you can provide to your patients who are pregnant through telehealth. And then at the end of that hour, Jane App is coming on. Sorry about that. Jane App's coming on, and they're going to talk about telehealth. And they're going to talk about their system, okay? Because a lot of people are using it. So I just want to let you know that's today. We have a whole schedule for this. So go to the resource page. You'll see all the other ones that are coming up. If you can't remember, healthyseminars.com/resources, then if you go to our homepage and you just scroll halfway down, there it is as well. So you can just go to the Healthy Seminars page and find it then. Okay, guys. Sally, thank you very, very much. Sharon had to jump in with patients. Sharon's doing telehealth, so she had to jump in with patients. We have telehealth resources for you. Sally, yeah, thank you for this. This was great. I'm looking forward to this whole series. What a review. And now that we're doing telehealth in our practice, it's just nice to take our herbal knowledge and then just take it to a whole other level for treating all kinds of things that people are presenting with today. So glad that you guys came on here live. Share these links with your colleagues. These are free resources from Healthy Seminars. You have these free resources every week. We have something almost every single day. End of day Sunday for me, Vancouver time, the free recordings will come down. So you have time to review them. There are no CEUs for these. There are no certificates or handouts for these. Our paid courses are still happening. So if you need CEUs or you want to do longer courses, we have tons of those on Healthy, and we keep releasing them on a daily basis. Thank you for your questions. Those were amazing. Sally, this was a great presentation. I really enjoyed this. Thank you. So glad to have had the opportunity to learn from you.
Thanks, everyone.
So let's turn on the mics, and everybody can send their love to Sally for putting this together and say hi to each other. So one more time, let's do our community immunity.
Thank you, Sally. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sally, that was awesome.
Thank
you. I appreciate it.
See who know me knows that
Really
the tears
awesome.
are coming.
Thank you.
Sally.
Sally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, thanks, Lauren, too.
Great. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. Let's rock.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Norman. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody. Take care. I hope to see you on the Deborah Betts, Sick Bits.
Is it hard to find good names?
You guys online again later today. Be well.